Hello and welcome from the United Arab Emirates all the way to Hong Kong, where our expert guests will be joining us from, and the more than 75 countries our viewers are watching us live on the Knowledge Summit website and all the Knowledge Summit social media platforms. Welcome to this special session where we'll be shedding light and focusing on knowledge management with our expert guest and big data in business and industry 4.0 perspective. Almost every aspect in the way we are currently conducting our businesses and just our daily lives and our work has changed tremendously in the past 2 years. Some experts say that what happened in the past year has accelerated digitization by more than 10 to 15 years. Imagine that. Our expert today, our expert guest, has a has a unique perspective on knowledge management and how businesses, organizations, and countries need to make use of this tremendous change we are witnessing to guarantee growth and excellence in prospective sectors. Our guest, interestingly enough, says that we are now stepping into industry 4.0 world where knowledge and innovation are crucial for supporting growth of organizations and countries. And Professor Tsui also says that currently, when it comes to big data, while it is true we have a lot as humans to learn, but he also likes to show us today that we also have a lot to unlearn about the way we process and take in new data and react to it or use it to the benefit of our businesses. I would like to welcome Professor Eric Tsui, Associate Director, Knowledge Management and Innovation Research Center from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. He brings with him a wealth of over 2 decades of experience. Before joining the university, he has a passion for teaching. He's an IT veteran. You have a lot of interest, Professor, in blended learning, learning pedagogy, knowledge management, and technologies. We're so excited to be hearing more from you today. How are you doing? How's Hong Kong?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jesse. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you too. I know that you wanted to basically try and simplify this topic for a lot of us who are not experts in the field. So you have gracefully prepared a presentation along with some visual elements, which are now so important in knowledge transfer. So I'd like to, with that, give you the mic and the virtual eyes and ears that we are all joining here to listen. And I'd invite all of you as well to put in some of your questions, which I'll be asking the professor at the end of his presentation, so we can shed light on some of your inquiries and remind you as well, you can follow the professor and later on we'll be posting the link of this session. And don't forget to follow him on his LinkedIn as well under his name, Professor Eric Tsui. We're all ears, Professor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jesse. That's an excellent introduction, not about me, but about the topic. And you are, exactly right. In this age of digitalizations, we see, massive number of digitalized assets, data, and also connections around us. So, this talk is to help to inspire and encourage everyone to think about, where the opportunities are and how do we actually leverage on knowledge and innovation to excel and propel forward, both for individuals and also for organizations and countries. But of course, in this world, there's no free lunch. When there are opportunities, there are also challenges. So I'm also here to explain to you, or at least outline those challenges that I know of now, so that we can together combat them and come up with a solution. The sooner, the better. Now, I would say that, I've given plenty of presentations on knowledge management and some on big data, but today's presentation has got a niche to it. Why? Because I'm presenting from an Industry 4.0 perspective, as Jesse has mentioned several times. Precisely, what is the Industry 4.0 perspective? We are stepping into the fourth industrial revolution, as the name suggests. So what exactly is the fourth industrial revolution? So I like to play this short video so that we are on the same page about what exactly is the fourth industrial revolution.
Modern society has gone through three major eras of industrial revolution. Driven by the invention of steam and water power, the first industrial revolution took place in the early 19th century. However, work in all industries was still highly labor-intensive. The wide application of electrical technology hailed the second industrial revolution in the late 19th century, when manufacturing plants were built, laying out the infrastructure and processes for the mass production of products. Digitalization in the 20th century gave birth to the third industrial revolution. Computational and data analysis technologies ensured consistent and efficient operation of processes. And machines could acquire a very basic form of intelligence to support decision-making. With the advancement of big data, cloud computing, data collection and transmission devices, software, and increasingly connected societies, we have stepped into the fourth industrial revolution, or Industry 4.0, and it is symbolized by the real-time smartness exhibited by machines. So what exactly is the fourth industrial revolution? What's it like living in a world of the Internet of Things? Just how smart can machines be? Will robots take over our jobs? How can organizations and individuals be best prepared for the onset of this disruptive force? This online course covers these fascinating topics and more. It is truly an eye-opener into smart products and services for future living. In a factory, such smartness can be manifested as the intelligent diversion and automation of processes, cyber-physical systems for enhanced modeling to support product design, and operations planning. A smart product can even predict its own potential breakdown, and thus alert the user to carry out preventative maintenance to avoid unexpected breakdowns. Massive personalization of products and services is now very real. Our cities are becoming more and more connected and smarter. The division of work between machines and humans is constantly becoming blurred and is being redefined. We can see this happening in the manufacturing, transportation, healthcare, logistics, and many other industries. Welcome to the world of Industry 4.0.
Right. I hope you get at least something out of this video, because I think it already shed light on some of the key points I want to convey to you about in this seminar. And that is, as it explains, we are now at the onset of the fourth industrial revolution. Not only computers was in the third industrial revolution. We are now into the fourth, and the basic tenet of this is data. Using data to generate intelligence so that we can generate solutions that are smart and helping the society to improve, as well as in decision making. Now, let's go back to some of the fundamentals of doing business, especially for-profit business. How does an organization typically generate values, right? And I would say that, if I make it really simple, it's about understanding what the market needs and being able to produce the necessary product and services, and then, target the potential customers, satisfy them, and then the customer will pay, and that's how you get, something in return. And of course, in the real world, it's not as simple as that. Organizations also have to, organize their organization management structure, human resources, and logistics, procurement, and so forth, well, in order to function, efficiently, smoothly. So that brings up the topic about, the functions and the necessary elements for a firm to succeed. And in academia, in the last 30 to 40 years, it has gone through different theories. The first theory was the theory of the firm, and that assumes an organization is basically a set of procedures. And when people leave, if you can find another person to follow this procedure, then typically, you may continue with the business. And we soon find out that the world is not as simple as that. Now, the thinking has now taken us to a resource base of the firm, which is, organization will try to make best use of the resources, people, assets, know-how, structure, processes, software, and more in order to solve their problems. But still, that's not specific enough. what exactly is the most important resource in the organization? It's the people. It's the brain of the people, the knowledge they possess, the willingness of them to submit the knowledge and form collective wisdom in order to solve problems. So organizations are not, slow in reacting to this. Many different methods have been applied for knowledge transfer. Training, development of guidelines, rereading materials, reverse engineering, and so forth. But these are all not enough. Guess what? The sad thing is there are still knowledge leakages. The knowledge are not effectively transmitted from one place to another. And to illustrate this, with a simple reason, I use this example, which again is a short video that illustrates about the power of knowledge here. Well, that's to me is an excellent example.
This is brilliant. I'm going to use that in my invoices next.
Wonderful, wonderful. I made an impact already.
Yeah.
And I think this example vividly illustrates the importance of knowledge, the importance of a particular type of knowledge, tacit knowledge, right? Knowledge that are not easily visible, not easily recordable, and not easily transferred. I mean, the old man or the retired engineer obviously have a lot of experience, and this experience, no matter how much time, pen and paper you give to him, they can never be, sufficiently externalized. Well, the young engineers, well, are they bright? Of course they are bright. Have they received training? They've received training, but you can't train everybody for every possible scenario and every possible future scenarios. So therefore, tacit knowledge, as you can see here, unfortunately, is the bigger part of the knowledge that we have. If we make it simple, all the knowledge represents either tacit knowledge or explicit. Tacit is the big part, which is very, very difficult to harness and put a finger on it. And this is part of the problem that KM is underpinning a lot of success in organizations. And in fact, to make the matter worse, everybody, you, me, and I, we can say a lot more than what we can write, and we can, we know a lot more than what we can say as well. So there's a lot of things actually in our head that we cannot fully externalize. There's already leakage, right, or gap between our brain and our hand. So in KM, one of the very simple strategies is to enable people to talk to each other, conversations, whatever way you make it, either via Zoom or, to have a cup of coffee or have a water dispenser, getting people to, cluster together and talk. That's an effective means, but of course, you can't do it globally because of the distance divide. Now, let me come back to the fourth industrial revolution. Now, you would agree that obviously the fourth come from the third. So I would say that many of the existing organizational structures, many of the ways that our society is being designed and measured is still rooted in the third industrial revolution. Look at these words that we are all too familiar with in our education, in our day-to-day job, in our thinking. Efficiency, productivity, cost optimization, load balancing, the uptime and all these things, right? And these are, hallmarks of trying to do things in an efficient, productive way. And this is one of the key winning formulas in the third industrial revolution, not in the fourth, right? So sadly, the world is more than just talking. Those terms that I just mentioned, in fact, they are also rooted in the design of organizational structure. So typically, organizations have hierarchies. Hopefully not too many, but they have hierarchies. So you have senior people, you have middle level people, and you have operational staff. And therefore, these hierarchies actually horn or inhibit, the full transmission of knowledge, and that's why that explains some of the leakages as well. Look at this, I use the analogy of an underground pipe rope. You can see all these pipes. We call it silos in organizations, right? Each department, it carries its own knowledge. It has its own knowledge flow, but there is little or no communications between departments, and that's the problem. Organizations do not know and something that they already know. So one department may have discovered a solution, another department didn't know it, so they repeat the same mistake, only to find out via social setting or accidentally. Organizations having lots of trouble trying to retrieve what they have generated before. And of course, not every staff is on the same page about the existence and whereabouts of knowledge and documents and so forth. And all these complicate the matter of doing good decision making. Well, the writings on the wall, if you recall the video explaining about the fourth industrial revolution, in the first three industrial revolution, we went from the emphasis of mass production, generating tools, and also to computers and automation, load balancing, right? But now to information and to a knowledge era. The success in the fourth industrial revolution is not just by computers. Computers, be honest, is in the third industrial revolution. We are now making use of advanced usages of data and algorithms. Of course, that's behind that is computers to generate new opportunities and values. So, the conclusion is knowledge and innovation hold the key to success of the Industry 4.0 world. This animation perhaps even enlighten you more, and that is, while on the right-hand side, on the top right, we're looking for opportunities in the Industry 4.0 world, we soon realize that we're surrounded by lots of data, massively connected networks, and we have aging problems, we have sustainability problems, but we also have advancement in new technologies and cloud computing. Now, as I said, in the third industrial revolution, we are told, we are trained in operational excellence. That, in fact, we have to let loose now. Why? Because not that we are not pursuing it, but in fact, there is a better player to do this for us, and that is software and robots. Okay? And increasingly, everywhere in the world, I'm sure that you will read in news every second day, something in some factories or manufacturing or automation plants is being replaced by further software automation or robots, and that will continue. So that leads me to further enlighten you about the importance of having a focus on knowledge in organization, in our society. And in a nutshell, if we're doing good KM, we will be creating knowledge, sharing knowledge, and actioning on good knowledge. And from that, assuming that the other, supplementary measures in organizations like planning, like, resourcing, human resources, and so forth are also performing well, good KM should, naturally have a strong correlation to good organizational performance. And many organizations are leveraging on this already, and hopefully many more will see the light and adopt more and more, good KM for their practice. So, without further elaboration, I think it's, obvious to point out that good KM will lead to increase. Of course, if it's a for-profit firm, customers, sales, revenue, profits, and things like that, quality of service, consistency in decision making. If you are a civil service organization, which you're not entirely keen on, the revenue and so forth. But good KM also help organization to be more agile, more adaptive, and be more flexible in handling different situations, including creating of new opportunities and values. And at the same time, there's a whole raft of things that good management of knowledge can reduce. But in a nutshell, the good KM help us, especially in the Industry 4.0 world, to build networks with trust, especially external networks, because these external networks, if we can extend them, build that dynamically, it can immediately enhance or flexibly enhance our capabilities, be it organizational capabilities, personal capabilities, or societal capabilities. Well, in the last 20 years, again, just to make it really simple, the two fundamental approaches to tackling the area of KM has been a human-centric approach and a technology-oriented approach. The human-centric approach, as the name suggests, put people, at the forefront. Group together people who have a wealth of knowledge and also linked up with people who have a quest for this kind of knowledge. So with that, if you can, for example, nurture a thriving community online or face-to-face, you would have a good, helping community that can learn and also help others to excel. And many organizations adopt, for example, communities of practice. I'm sure some of you may have heard about this term, to nurture, harness, and widely share the knowledge. Our university has several of these in operation for the last decade. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, we also see, a more technologically oriented approach to KM. And typically, this approach is on codifying. Codifying what we know or trying to codify what we know in our head, the so tacit knowledge, externalize it so that you can index it, you can store it, you can share it, other people can find it, other people can read it, and hopefully the reader can reenact or reinterpret the situation in their head. Now, that's a lot of assumptions, and typically the right-hand side approach, which is the technology-based approach, is less effective. We know that for about at least 15 years now, because why? External factors change. Tacit knowledge is very fluid. Whatever we have documented, circumstantial factors, once changed, it will render what we have written to be ineffective, or it needs to be updated. So that requires a lot of effort to follow up. So therefore, the trend and the understanding is very much stacked towards the left-hand side, which is human-oriented approach to KM. Well, without going into the details, for those of you, who are interested, assuming that I've whet your appetite in this area, and then you may want to do a search and read up on some of the common projects. In my view, these are very common projects that are reported in the public domain. The knowledge repository, knowledge maps, expert directory, like a yellow page in looking for experts in an organization or in a society, how to harness collective wisdom, doing customer knowledge management, and several others. But let me point out that, these leakages, it's a significant problem in KM, and any way you can reduce it is going to be a big plus for your organization. Leakages appear in many places. For example, individuals, they have a lot of tacit knowledge. They may not share widely and regularly. And of course, your project teams, same thing happened. So you have leakages in that, in the people dimension. You also have leakages in the repository. You can't code up everything. There's always tons of things that you did not code up, and therefore your search engines cannot reach it. So you have leakage in those areas as well. Then you also have leakages when knowledge flow or generated and flow across different units. As I said, many organizations are still hierarchical and they operate in silos. So Department A, they may be doing very well. They may have solved many problems, but they may not know what Department B has solved it. Okay, and some of the solutions of that Department B have generated could well be, a solution for Department A as well. Yet that was not communicated or not even aware of. So therefore, you also have knowledge leakages in inter-unit and, of course, inter-organizational flow as well. Well, so much for knowledge management. I'm not switching topic. I'm going back to to data, the very important commodity of Industry 4.0.
Big data, the buzzword, yeah? Big data now is like the big buzzword in the industry.
Very good input. In fact, I always discuss with my students, during my career, I started with, the customer is king. And then people told me that content is king. And now people tell me that data is king. Right? So we've gone through a different evolution.
Marketing is king and content is king.
Right. So what can we do with data? Well, before that, the challenge to us is right now in Industry 4.0, and that is we are dealing with a lot of data. A lot of data are coming through. A lot of data are being captured. Now, that is a good thing on one hand, because these data help us to analyze and obtain information in many different places and decision-making points that we never, ever able to. On the other hand, we also have lots of challenges because with this newfound and volume of data, even the world's fastest computers cannot hold all of them and analyze all of them. That brings the topic of big data, which is trying to, to identify which, or one of the problems or one of the focus is to identify which part of the data we should focus on and do analysis as quickly as possible, assuming that this analysis can be projected to represent the trend or the implication of the whole volume of data. That has always been an evolving, challenge with big data. The algorithms, the data, the amount of data, how much to store them, how to analyze them, and how to interpret them. Well, of course, any big data book in chapter 1 will tell you, how to define big data, or how does the author define big data. And big doesn't mean just the volume. So let me say that again, big does not just mean that it's the volume. It's the speed that is the data is accumulating, the variety of the format that the data is accumulating, and the veracity, which is the truthfulness. Right now is a big thing in society. There's so much misinformation out there. How can we verify the authenticity and truthfulness of a piece of information? So you can see that these are complicated problems that will require much more research to solve. So in terms of the sources of data, I think it's almost common sense that you can extend this list easily. But for now, the media provides a lot of data on the internet, the Web 2.0, Internet of Things, one of the biggest components of Industry 4.0, and that is embedding miniature sensors in devices, in products, in parts, and even in human tissues, right? And these sensors are collecting a lot of data and enabling these data to be analyzed and to further action to be to be operated or manipulated subsequently. So Web 2.0 has always been, for the last 15 years, a big volume of data, simply because it has gone or the internet has gone from 1 to billions to billions to billions, thanks to the Web 2.0 multi-directional flow. So, the escalation in this problem of data is significant and is causing scientists a lot of worries, or you can also say there are a lot of opportunities to study. And I like to especially point out, the high end, the video, the audio sort of data, the unstructured data. Unstructured data is everywhere around us. Computers are much slower in analyzing unstructured data. Yet, about 80% or more of the world's data is unstructured. In other words, it's not well laid out as, for example, in an Access database or in an Excel spreadsheet where computers can eat it, with no problem. But you'll be asking computers to analyze email. You'll be asking computers to analyze SMS messages, to analyze Instagram photographs and things like that. And computers need advanced algorithm, and you need innovative techniques in order to discover exactly what's the meaning behind these things in the context in a fast, accurate way. A lot more research still needs to be done. Well, perhaps I finish the talk with some case studies, simple case studies. For example, this one you can see, a busy freeway, a flypass, and assuming that if you operate IoT with sensors in the tires of these cars and trucks, you can also place sensors in different part of the bridge. What can you do? Well, in fact, it generates several major advantages for different groups of people, for the fleet operator, for the tire company, for the truck driver and truck company, right? Because with this, they can analyze for each truck, for each group of truck, for each fleet, where they've been to, the wear and tear on the tires. And then with all these analysis, the algorithm can help to work out and even predict the future, especially if there is a risk of some tires being worn out, causing accidents and so forth. You may recall in the video that the Industry 4.0 can also help with the data being analyzed, can also help part of the manufacturing plant. It may break down. Preventative maintenance is needed. Why? Because it's got so much data, so it can analyze the data for similar models, similar wear and tear, and then if it's so identified that a certain proportion or a significant proportion of the machines and plant of the similar wear and tear and model are in trouble, then you might as well alert the human. So let the human make the decision. And imagine, this kind of application is so important and so paramount, especially for life-threatening applications. Imagine that aircraft can submit this data in real time of all their engines, whether they are on the ground or they are flying, and that would be wonderful. If any engines is detected to be having some problem, then immediately, even those that are flying right now can be advised to ground as soon as possible. It saves many lives. Well, perhaps there are two other case studies before I finish. The first one, the CDC detection of epidemic outbreak, very timely right now. I don't want to discuss it in Hong Kong really. You would have thought that the CDC, which is the American Center for Disease Control, they would have systems coming out of their ears. So when they try to detect an epidemic outbreak, I would thought that they would analyze the data in their systems. Wrong. I was wrong, right? If you think that, you're wrong as well. In fact, CDC partnered with Google. Many years ago, they had a project, and Google, in fact, has been accumulating what we type in, you and I type in to the search engine, even date back 25 years ago. So Google ran very extensive tests on mathematical models and identified that there are some 40 patterns of keywords and phrases people type in if they suspect they may have caught the virus, right? So the philosophy is, or the theory is, if you start to sneeze, and showing some symptoms of the virus that's being broadcasting in the news, right? It's tearing your city apart. You would like to do a search on Google and say, whether these symptoms overlap with what you're experiencing. But the moment you do that, Google will detect, and if they start to detect unusually in a particular location, clustering in a particular place, maybe a village, there's an unusual number of people typing these, the keywords that could be indicative to an epidemic outbreak, in the last 20 years. Then they will alert the local authority, and you have something like that coming to your door. And in Hong Kong, we have something like that already. Right, and the next one I want to talk about is buying cars. To buy second-hand cars. American data again. 40 years of data. To buy a second-hand car, a reliable one. Everyone wants to buy a reliable car, whether it's secondhand or whatever, right? So do you know how to choose? What is the most important criteria? In fact, surprisingly, with big data, you don't even need to see the car. You don't even need to test drive the car, right? You just need to ask what is the color of the car. Why? Because based on big data analysis for the last 40 years of secondhand car that was sold by U.S. dealers, well, for the whole U.S. Country, last 40 years, orange car is the most reliable, right? And after sales,
Why is
it's the
that?
least
Why is that?
service. That's an interesting thing. Why is that? Because you have a scientific mind. That's my point. As big data, you have to believe in it first and figure out the reason later. Because if I want to buy a reliable car, I would purchase it and without thinking anymore. These are Hong Kong pictures, right? So I come to my point. My point is, for this is, on many occasions with big data, you have to trust the data. The data supposedly cannot lie if you do the analysis correctly and if you're interpreting in the right context. Now, these are very big assumptions, are very important assumptions. So, the researchers are also moving into a data-driven predictions. I've got a list here. Some of this may be straightforward. Some of these will be very interesting. Some of these you may disguise it. You don't think that's true, but anyway, these have been scientifically proved. Each one of these. So I like to end my talk by reminding everybody there's plenty of opportunities and big opportunities in the KM and big data arena, especially in big data. Before we can enjoy these opportunities or pursue and exploit these opportunities, we need to accept several things, which require, as what Jesse said in the beginning, for us to unlearn several things. The speed of making decision is far more important than casual reasoning. And the minute you just cried out, why is orange car more reliable? Well, I can share you my personal belief, but that has not been scientifically proved, right? The data is an evidence, right? So the reason may come later. The reason may need to be proved, right? But data give us the factual situation, right? So we have to distinguish association between two things are related, from causality. Causality, one leads to B, A leads to B, B leads to C. Well, that's the reason for it, but that's not the same as association, all right? And trade exactness for approximations. Everybody knows about this simple rule. If you after perfection, that's 100%. It's going to take you the end of the world and unlimited resources to get there. You're going to run out of steam, run out of resources, run out of energy. But if you're happy to settle for 80% or 85% of the performance, that may be a lot easier to achieve. And that's exactly the approach for designing big data algorithms. Consider using alternative sources of data, like in the CDC case, detection of epidemic. The blind May is not via discovery, is not via the data in the CDC system. Discovery is via the data that's being held in Google, which is completely separate from the CDC. And leverage on human input. Human input is still very, very important because of the tacit knowledge. I don't believe at this stage any volume of data, any analysis, any algorithms, no matter how advanced it is, it can replace tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge provides the context. So this human judgment is never to be underestimated and has to be in the future, continue to be a major dimension in the decision making, right? And for those of you who are computer science oriented, to improve the performance of the computer algorithm, now this may be a bit outrageous. I'm a computer scientist by training as well. If you want to fix an algorithm, maybe you should try it with more data. Maybe your algorithm is correct. Maybe your program is correct. You are just testing it with small data. You are not testing it with big data. So try to understand from a different perspective. Maybe you have to change the data or try with different data with the existing algorithm. That's also something that you should try. With that, I think I've exhausted the time. That's my contact. And I think I should pass it back to Jesse. Back to you, Jesse.
So interesting. I mean, I have so many points I can, as a journalist, ask you for hours, but and there's a lot of interest from the audience who have submitted questions. So let's get on with it. And maybe I'll start with the first quick question, maybe the most obvious one. You have focused and mentioned a lot, and maybe you have explained to us the what. You have explained to us what is knowledge management and how it should be used and how we should update the way we think about data and big data in our daily lives and our business. But as a journalist, I'd like to ask you about the why. Why should this be a priority? How would you convince, knowing that the way organizations work sometimes is the same way or countries operate, and that includes the successes and the let's say the missteps. Why should organizations as well as countries put so much emphasis and consider the update in the way we treat knowledge management as a top priority, in your opinion?
Very good question. And I thought the answer is already, discreetly surfaced in some of
Yes.
my slides, but I'll sum it up here.
Yes, I wanted it flatly, like obvious, to be maybe a headline, because I think the why is very important.
You are right. It's obvious to me. It may not be obvious to the audience, and that's a typical mistake of the professor.
Of the expert, yes.
Right. Okay. Now, you may recall talking about the Industrial Revolution.
Yes.
At the fourth Industrial Revolution, we are no longer just relying on computers. That was in the third Industrial Revolution, and automation and computers are already being deployed in the third Industrial Revolution, and they will continue to improve. So you may recall that in today's society, we compete based on, for example, operational efficiency, as well as product leadership and customer intimacy. Many countries, especially in Asia, has a strong focus on operational efficiency, right? And with that, as I pointed out earlier, increasingly, many of the tasks, the manual tasks, the repetitive tasks, the structured tasks are being automated, further automated, replaced, or made redundant by software advancement or robots. So therefore, if we continue to just compete based on speed, this is no way to break through, because the people can match it with automation. Your competitors can match it with automation and robots, right? In order to create new values, and that's the thing. New values will excite, new market segments and customers to pay, as well as to take our society and enjoyment to the next level. New values can only be created by revisiting, the business model, by generating new knowledge, by identifying new areas where we can deliver pleasure. And data with knowledge and innovation holds the key, in my view, in creating or constantly exploring and exploiting new business value.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting how you bring it forward again. And one thing you highlight as well, which is automation, and there's a lot of reservation when it comes to automation, because experts like you would say it is very misunderstood. Tedious tasks can be replaced so that humans can focus on bigger tasks, larger tasks. And I noticed in your presentation, you focus a lot, despite all the advancement and now big data being considered as important currency, described as a currency, you still say that the human factor is still key. It is still the most important resource. Can you address, before I go to the questions coming from the audience, can you address this fear that we hear a lot, that automation and digitization basically means loss of jobs?
Very interesting questions. And I'd like to dig deeper into this word automation, or any task that can be replaced by automation. In fact, it's not that straightforward. If you go back to having a deeper look at some of the tasks, processes that you suspect it can be automated, chances are you'll find that there are some, maybe minor or mini decision points that still require human input. So for those, they are not straightforward. They still require some human input or interventions before they can be automated. So they will not be the first batch of automation that can be put through in the short term. So when we talk about automation, at the moment, we are talking about those straightforward ones, simple decision making, where it is not life critical, not threatening, and directly with the data collected, we can safely let a machine to make the decision, so we can automate those. But there's still a lot of tasks which, in principle, cannot be automated, and that's why, to answer your question partially, human being is still needed, but we should expect human beings' intervention and input into task automation becoming less and less, and eventually, give it time, give it maybe another 5 years, 10 years, then this human intervention become less and less, and we truly have to move up the value ladder to focusing on more higher value tasks, because artificial intelligence are becoming smarter and more encompassing.
Wonderful. Professor, you also mentioned that some of the challenges to do with this around this topic is the lack of knowledge transfer or knowledge sharing, maybe, and the lack of collaboration when it comes to knowledge between sometimes same departments in the same organization, let alone separate organizations. Here's a question that just came through our social media channels, and it says, how could we encourage employees to share knowledge? Because there is this individuality when it comes to humans, and that's also seen in organizations, that we want to hoard knowledge because now knowledge is power. How would you encourage employees?
That's a very common question that I've been answering for the last 20 years. I would say that a number of things that I can advise you to try or to think about. Firstly, hoarding knowledge is no longer, in my view, no longer a big thing in today's organization. Why? Because for anyone who is still working in organization, they realize that things are moving very fast. They will realize that information is becoming more and more accessible. So whatever you're hoarding, it may be just a matter of, days, maybe less, maybe minutes, or even seconds.
But the internet is maybe seconds.
Right, so that's one thing. So less of a worry there for knowledge hoarding. 20 years ago, yes, a big problem, but still we have to improve. And that is, and you're right, people always are a carefully minding about, why should I spend the time in sharing this? I could have go home half an hour earlier in order to enjoy family time and things like that. So the organizational strategy is, a combination of things. Management need to lead the way, and you have to, to ensure that grassroots and all levels of staff understood why it's important to collaborate, why you have to act in a collective way. Individually, the collective way will generate more than the sum of the individuals. So if you want to survive as an organization, if you want to excel, you have to work together to collaborate rather than hoarding knowledge to protect your own job, which by itself, it cannot hold anyway. All right. So this is also good. So convince people, try to let people know, and with examples, why they will have to be sharing, and for organizations who are actually sharing in a collective basis, why the greener pasture is so much better.
There's a lot of questions along the same lines, tackling the issue of privacy and ethical, basically, regards when it comes to policies and digitization. So I'm going to try and consolidate several questions into one, which basically would say that the fourth generation has several advantages, as you mentioned, but we've also seen large companies and corporates being hacked and private information being published. In your opinion, is it the fact that the more the networks are branched, the greater the danger? Is this a double-edged sword?
I would agree with, it's a double-edged sword at the moment. I'm not a legal person, but I believe that, there are certain legal boundaries and constraints that we have to all observe, plus the ethical issue, which are obviously part of our professional integrity. So there has been, setbacks, where efforts like this has been slowed down because of some additional constraints that we have to meet. For example, at our university, a good example is in order to use big data to enhance our students' learning. So once you talk about applying what we learn or what data we have collected to other courses, we need special permission. Right, a lecturer can only use the data from his own class, from his own students, in order to improve his teaching in his own class. So there are limitations on what we can do at the moment, and at the moment, I think we should be ambitious, but we should also operate ethically, sound, and also with professional integrity, abiding by all the confidential constraints.
Mm. Professor, there's also a couple of questions and a lot of interest in applying knowledge management tools in developing countries, as well as in sustainable economies, maybe two different parts of the spectrum. So let's start with developing countries where, basic technology infrastructure is somewhat non-existent. How can the fourth industrial revolution, as you describe it, be employed in developing countries?
Well, they can start with some of the basic things that I mentioned. The two typical approaches to KM. To set up communities so that they have groups of people who have like-minded with shared goals of sharing and learning things together. They can also develop, some repositories, because given that they haven't got anything, they can filter out those things that doesn't change often, right? There are some information or knowledge, I can say, that doesn't change very often, and for those, it does make sense to codify them up so that the other people can also enjoy exactly what are the good practices that's being generated in certain places. Just don't overdo it, because very quickly you run into limitations. But as you said, for developing economies, they almost start with from ground zero. So starting a KM culture, starting to apply the basic techniques and do the initial layer, you can't be too wrong with that.
Here's also a question coming through from our viewers, which is pretty specific. I'd love to hear your answer on that. It says, which people, maybe jobs and positions in an organization would you say need to participate in the KM program?
Wonderful question. And let me give you an example. For an organization to be truly successful as a knowledge leverage organization, everybody should be a knowledge manager.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, and why? Here's another question coming through. So I'm trying to go through your questions, guys. Give me a second. Bear with me. I'm trying to consolidate, as a lot of you are tackling some of the main common points. Here's another question that says, why is it important to capture and manage knowledge? I think the professor sort of answered that question, but let's go to the next one. That says, how might an organization manage tactic knowledge? Tactic knowledge is something I'm not familiar with. What is that, Professor?
I assume the technique is either tactical knowledge or technical knowledge.
I think tactic from tactical. Is that what? Okay, if you
never heard about
okay, me neither.
Specific, a question on this. I assume it's well, it doesn't matter whether it's technical or tactical. I stick to the simple differentiation between tacit and explicit.
Yeah.
If a piece of knowledge, is made explicit, you better make sure that that explicit knowledge is not affected easily by external change in factors, because otherwise it will waste your effort. All right, because you constantly have to update it, and if you don't, then its effectiveness and appropriateness will erode very quickly. Right? Mm-hmm. If you have nothing to start with, then looking for something that can be codified and will remain intact for some time, you can't be too wrong. Right? So technical knowledge, that may be one way of that would be one candidate to codify. And the other thing is I've seen in organization is they also record tacit knowledge in the form of short videos. For example, you have engineers working on different models of products that they're dealing with, and whenever a new product comes up, and you have to support your clients on this, and maybe not everything is document enough or sufficiently documented in manuals and also in training. So engineers would record a short video about, in this particular case, how will you solve this problem. So especially when a product is newly released, to supplement the codified knowledge in the manual. So that has also paid off very well in many of the engineering services firms, at least in Hong Kong and in this part of the world.
Brilliant. Very interesting topic that we can go on for quite some time on. Viewers joining us from all across the globe, you can continue following Professor Eric Tsui on his LinkedIn for more insight on this topic. Professor, the brilliant video you shared about the ship and the old man fixing the ship also reminded me of the saying that this quote that keeps popping in our LinkedIn feed, which says, if you hire me for a job and I take 5 minutes to do it, you're not going to pay me for the 5 minutes that I took to do the job. You're going to pay me for the 2 to 3 decades it took me to build the experience to fulfill that job in only 5 minutes. And this is exactly the power of knowledge and experience, which takes decades to build, hence giving us results in just a few minutes. It's been a pleasure, Professor. Thank you so much. Professor Eric Tsui is the Associate Director, Knowledge Management and Innovation Research Center at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. I'm Jessy El Murr. I was delighted to be your host for this session, Knowledge Management and Big Data in Business and Industry 4.0. Thank you so much for the Knowledge Summit.
It's a pleasure for me to address Knowledge Talk. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And we'll be recapping this session together on all the social media platforms of the Knowledge Summit. Thank you so much.
See you next time. Thank you.
See you. Bye.
Thank you.